This video is about Nick Reiner and why an old video he posted years ago is suddenly just being watched very differently after his arrest. And not because his video changed, but because the context around it did. Not because the video itself shows violence or anger or anything obviously just disturbing, it doesn't. But because everything surrounding it has shifted. And when an arrest happens, especially in a serious case, so the past gets re-examined and all materials gets reinterpreted and innocent moments gets reframed. And content that once felt disposable suddenly becomes and feels loaded. And that process has already begun here. And the video people keep replaying wasn't just created after the arrest. It wasn't staged for attention. It wasn't edited for a shock value. It's something that Nick Reiner uploaded years ago, long before the case existed as a legal theory. And in it, he performs as a character called David. He jokes, he raps, and he smokes. And he drifts in it out of a frame, and a dog wanders through the background, and the tone is loose, casual, and almost just careless. And there is no sense that anything important is happening because at the time nothing was. And that's exactly why people are uneasy now. And there is no urgency in the video, no visible tension, no attention to present himself carefully. And it looks like something posted precisely because it didn't feel consequential. And because the assumption was this will just never matter. And that assumption is what people are reacting to now. And there is one line that keeps getting clipped and reposted more than other. Not because it's clever, not because it's insightful, but because of how casually it's said. You're gonna have to bail me out of jail. And at that time, it's just a throwaway line. No tension, no threat, no confession. The kind of phrase that fits a rim and disappears as soon as it's spoken. But after an arrest, that same line gets reinterpreted, not as a performance, not as a character work, as a foreshadowing. And once it happens, the meaning changes, even though the words didn't. And here is a key point. And this is where people start getting it wrong. The line didn't just predict anything, so the outcome came first. And then the line got rewritten and after the fact to feel significant. And that's why it feels eerie now. And not because it contains a hidden knowledge, not because people just are reading it backward. And if you didn't just know what happened later, you wouldn't notice it at all. And the reason that line works so well in clips and in thumbnails is because it's vague and it's generic, and thousands of people have set versions of it just without a consequence. And that creates a simple split. Most viewers never consciously register that either the line meant something at the time, in which case it should have raised alarms back then, or it only feels meaningful now because of what happened later. And both can be true. And what really just unsettled people isn't the words, it's a mismatch. The relaxed tone, the joking, the talk in the background, and the almost cozy just domestic feel. And none of it matches how people expect danger to look. We expect tension, we expect a warning signs, we expect something to announce itself. And the video doesn't. And then contrast hits. And the resurfaced clip just cuts to real-world footage that gas station camera and the police presence and the LAPD arrest. And there is no character anymore, no performance, no ambiguity, and just a posture. And that's a jump from unserious to irreversible, and just does more work than any commentary ever could. And after that, the case enters the legal system. Arraignment footage and the formal charges and the defense statements and the court dates. And this is where the public understands just often that breaks down. And because the legal process doesn't just move fast and it doesn't just explain itself in a plain language, Silence gets reinterpreted as a strategy, and delays gets treated as a deception, and normal procedure gets mistaken for a hidden meaning. And one development that already draws attention is the defense attorney withdrawing from the case. Online, that immediately turns into a speculation, like what did lawyer discover? What just can't be defended, and just what do they know? And $1 million defense attorney Alan Jackson is just suddenly withdrawing from the case, so it looks suspicious. But legally, so attorney withdrawal is not just a confession, and it's not a revelation. It happens for conflicts, communication breakdowns, and ethical boundaries or strategy changes. And if a lawyer's only just walked away from just when cases looked bad, criminal defense wouldn't exist. And here is a simple logic that people skip, that either the lawyer knows something decisive, in which case the withdrawing doesn't just erase a fact, or maybe the lawyer doesn't, in which case the withdrawal tells us nothing. And there is no third option where silence equals proof. But now let's talk about Nick Reiner's likely defense posture, because this is what actually matters going forward. And at the early stage, the defense priority is not just the storytelling, it's a containment. And this usually means that limiting public statements, challenging how evidence is framed, protecting procedural rights, and preventing premature conclusions and from just hardening into assumptions. And you won't see a dramatic explanations yet, so you will see only restraint. And at the mild stage, so the case was likely turned on the specifics, so like what evidence exists versus what inferred, like which claims are supported by records, and how context is argued, and where interpretations cross into assumption. And this is where resurfaced media like the David video gets debated, not as a proof, but as a material that people just may misuse. And another narrative already just forming is about Nick's mental state in custody. Clips and descriptions circulate, dazzled, detached, childlike, on a suicide watch, and these labels pull viewers into a false choice, like either he is calculating threats or he is fragile and broken. And real cases are rarely just that clean. Those portrayals don't resolve anything. They just shift attention. If he looks unstable, people stop just asking about evidence. If he looks cold, people stop asking about the process. And either way, uncertainty disappears. And that's what makes those narratives spread. So what is the video actually about? It's about Nick Reiner, whose old content is now being reinterpreted under pressure, not because the content changed, but because the context did. And it's about how quickly a person just becomes a signal, how fast the speculation outruns a procedure, and how early narratives form long before cases are tested in a court. So if you are following this case, the most important thing to watch isn't old clips or dramatic commentary. It's what holds up when speculation runs out. So watch what gets proven, watch what gets challenged, and watch what survives procedure. Because the difference between understanding a case and repeating a story isn't intelligence, so it's a patience. And if this breakdown help you to see the situation more clearly, like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who has already just made up their mind before the case has even been started.